How's it going, everyone? Austin Honecker here. I just wanted to come on here for a while and give my review for All Elite Wrestling's AEW Dark Elevation from last night, which was October 31st, 2022. I gotta say, it was awesome from start to finish. For the matches, match 1, it was Madison Rayne versus Diamante. That was a great that was a great match, but the ending to it, Madison Rayne went over with a backslide bridge pin combination. Match 2, it was Frankie Kazarian versus Rhett Titus. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Frankie Kazarian went over with a springboard cutter. Match 3, it was Kiera Hogan versus Sky Blue. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Kiera Hogan went over with a twisting backdrop driver. Match 4, it was Dante Martin versus Brandon Cutler. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Dante Martin went over with the nosedive. Match 5, it was Athena versus Janai Kai. That was a great match, but the ending to it, Athena went over with the Swan Dive Cutter. Now, after the match, Athena attacked Janai Kai and beat the shit out of her and everything. That was cool. That was after the match, by the way. Match 6, it was the Best Friends, which are Trent Beretta, Chuck Taylor, and Orange Cassidy versus Anthony Young, Victor Andrews, and Patton. That was a great match, but the ending to it, the Best Friends went over cause Orange Cassidy pinned Anthony Young with a double chokeslam powerbomb combination from Trent Beretta, Chuck Taylor, and Orange Cassidy. Match 7, it was Eddie Kingston and Ortiz versus Miles Hawkins and Bro Keller. That was a great... That was a squash match, but the ending to it, Eddie Kingston and Ortiz went over cause Eddie Kingston made Miles Hawkins tap out to the stretch plum. Now, after the match, Eddie Kingston kept the stretch plum locked in on Miles Hawkins, and Ortiz reasoned with Eddie Kingston to get Eddie Kingston off of Miles Hawkins. And after Eddie Kingston got off of Miles Hawkins, Eddie Kingston attacked Bro Keller with a clothesline, and then Eddie Kingston executed a couple DDTs and laid Bro Keller out, and Eddie Kingston and Ortiz ended up celebrating their victory and went backstage and everything, while Bro Keller and Miles Hawkins were laid out and everything. That was cool. That was after the match, by the way. Match 8, it was Jade Cargill versus Trish Adora. That was a squash match, but the ending to it, Jade Cargill went over with the Jaded. Now, after the match, as Jade Cargill and Layla Gray were celebrating Jade Cargill's victory, the Beasts of Burdens, which are Vicky Guerrero, Nyla Rose, and Marina Shafir, came out and to taunt Jade Cargill and Layla Gray, and as that was going on, Jade Cargill and Layla Gray were leaving the ring to run after the Beasts of Burdens, which are Vicky Guerrero, Nyla Rose, and Marina Shafir, but the Beasts of Burdens ended up running away backstage, and Jade Cargill and Layla Gray ran after him and everything. That was cool. That was after the match, by the way. And match 9, and match 9, which was the main event, that was match 8, by the way. And match 9, and match 9, which was the main event, it was QT Marshall versus Danhausen. That was a great match, but the ending to it, QT Marshall went over with the Diamond Cutter. Now, after the match, QT Marshall and Lee Johnson were in the ring, and that they embraced with a hug and celebrated QT Marshall's victory and everything. And the reason being, with Lee Johnson being in the ring to celebrate with QT Marshall, is because during the match, Lee Johnson attacked Danhausen and helped QT Marshall secure the victory and everything. So all that was cool, and that was after the match, by the way, and that was match 9 and the main event, by the way. Now, besides the matches, Lexi Nair interviewed QT Marshall. Well, Lexi Nair brought up to QT Marshall that he'll be facing Danhausen tonight in the main event of Elevation and everything. And QT Marshall said, "Lexi, before we get to that, why in the hell are you dressed like that?" Lexi Nair said, "Because it's Halloween." QT Marshall said, "You, out of everyone, are celebrating this ridiculous holiday called Halloween." And QT Marshall kept talking shit and everything, and then Danhausen appeared out of a locker, and Danhausen was talking shit towards QT Marshall, and Danhausen was saying, "Sir, Mr. QT, do you remember when I threw you over the top rope in that battle royale?" QT Marshall was saying, "Danhausen, it wasn't just you. It was you and Hangman Adam Page." Danhausen said, "Well, it was Danhausen's plan all along." And Danhausen was saying, "But enough talk. I'm gonna go prepare." And then Danhausen ended up going back in the locker, and QT Marshall kept talking shit and everything, and then ended up walking off, and while Lexi Nair was looking on and everything. That was cool. Now, besides all that, Tony Schiavone, Paul White, and Matt Menard done commentary throughout the whole show. They done awesome as usual. The referees for the event were Mike Posey, Rick Knox, Paul Turner, Bryce Remsburg, Stephon Smith, and Aubrey Edwards. Okay. Stephon Smith refereed the match between Madison Rayne versus Diamante. Aubrey Edwards refereed the match between Frankie Kazarian versus Rhett Titus. Rick Knox refereed the match between Kiera Hogan versus Sky Blue. Mike Posey refereed the match between Dante Martin versus Brandon Cutler. Stephon Smith refereed the match between Athena versus Janai Kai. Bryce Remsburg refereed the match between the Best Friends versus Anthony Young, Victor Andrews, and Patton. Rick Knox refereed the match between Eddie Kingston and Ortiz versus Miles Hawkins and Bro Keller. Mike Posey refereed the match between Jade Cargill versus Trish Adora. And Paul Turner refereed the match between QT Marshall versus Danhausen. All the referees done awesome as usual. Now, excuse me. But anyway, I just wanted to come on here for a while and give them a review for All Elite Wrestling's AEW Dark Elevation from last night, which was October 31st, 2022. Like I said, it was awesome from start to finish. And with that being said, my name is Austin Honecker, and I will catch your fucking ass down the goddamn road. Peace out.